Welcome to our live webinar titled Participating in a Clinical Trial, a Patient Panel. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lee Clark, patient educator, and I'll be moderating the presentation today. As we get started, I'd like to recognize the generous support of all of our corporate sponsors and the generous support of our patients, families, and caregivers for supporting the webinar today. Due to the high volume of teleconferences on the internet, it is possible you may lose your connection during the program. If you are unable to view the webinar online, you can call in to hear the audio portion of the program using the call-in number in your reminder email. Today's program will be archived to our website within 2 to 3 business days. You will be notified by email when it is live and ready for viewing. During the presentation, you will be able to submit your questions for our panelists to answer. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time. To submit a question or a comment, open the Q&A window in the lower part of your screen. Type your question in the small text box window, and when you have finished typing, just hit enter. We'll do our best to get to everyone's questions today. When asking questions, I do ask that you do 2 things to help me manage the incoming question. First, submit your entire question all at the same time. Second, please do not share private health information in your question. Our panelists are not medical professionals and will not be able to answer specific questions related to your personal health care. Our panelists today, we have Donna and Emily, and they're here today to talk about their experiences as being patients and then participating in a clinical trial. So welcome, Donna, welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I'd like to get started and have you both just give a brief introduction of yourselves. Donna, would you like to start?
My name is Donna Gilbride, and I'm in Ohio, just south of Cleveland. I was diagnosed with MDS back in 2012. I am transfusion dependent, and actually 5 years ago, I joined a trial study. So I don't know what else I can say.
Great. Thanks, Donna. Emily?
I live here in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I came down with severe aplastic anemia just at the birth of my daughter's first and only child. So I can easily know when it was. It was in January 9 years ago. And it took a while to figure out what it was. And I was looking for solutions and had to have transfusions and did not have any success at Hopkins, and then saw a chart showing it was a trial. And I'm getting an echo. Anyway, so I was part of a trial at NIH and didn't make it for a while. Didn't respond in 3 months like they wanted. So I was dismissed, and 18 months later, I said, do you want to check me out again? And that was after about 40 transfusions. And they said, yeah, I'd love to have you come back. Then I discovered that because of my blood work, they had changed the trial a little bit. And so they gave you more time to respond. And so I'm the only one that was part of the first phase and the second phase of L-Traumapag. And the doctor there was so amazing. She was headed off to South Korea. I spoke to her on Tuesday. She called me on Friday, the night before she left, to say, yes, that the committee had spoken and they decided they'd take me. And within 6 weeks, actually, the second time I got it, I started responding. So that's my story, and I'm still with them. I like them. And when my platelets aren't going much of anywhere, and so but they're not there. I can have like, I don't have to go into surgery for a colonoscopy. Their platelets are like 60 and that seems to be okay. But I like being able to help them. So I've really been with this for almost 9 years with a little
Thanks.
break.
Thanks, Emily, so much. Donna, what initially led to your diagnosis of MDS?
I actually had been hospitalized in late 2011, and the hospitalist had come to me and said he had been reviewing my past records there and saw that I had low hemoglobin. And he said, it's low and you need to get to a hematologist immediately.
Mhm.
So I thought, oh, okay. He said, you have a red blood cell issue. So I went to a community hematologist here in the Akron area, and we had gone through tests. Looking back, yes, I was short of breath. Yes, I was having difficulty climbing stairs, but I equated that to I'm out of shape. I need to start exercising more, that kind of thing. And it took probably a solid month before the hematologist here in the area did a bone marrow biopsy and told me I had MDS, that there was no cure, and to go home and read everything on the internet I could and come back in 2 weeks. Well, I looked at her and I said, wait a minute, you just told me I'm going to die and to go home? And I thought, this is crazy. So eventually I made my way up to the Cleveland Clinic with Dr. Sekeres at the time. And it was just like he said to me when he saw me a few months later, he said, Donna, you were just months from being diagnosed even by anyone. That's how bad your blood is. And I thought, wow, so it's not all in my head. I really do have something wrong. But you know, when you have such symptoms as shortness of breath and fatigue, who knows what it is? So yeah, that led me to get my diagnosis and eventually make it up to the clinic. And I believe, yeah, it was through, I don't know if it was your newsletter, AAMDS, it could have, that had an article about a consortium from the Evans Foundation that was created for MDS studies. And Dr. Sekeres at the time was co-chair, and all records were going to be held up at the Cleveland Clinic. So I just got up and called his office right away and got an appointment ASAP. So I am very, yeah, it's nothing to mess around with. And I was doing fine on Airnest. He put me on Airnest right away. First time I saw him, he said, well, we'll do watch and wait. And then the next time I saw him, which was a month later, he said, we're going to do Airnest, because it was just, my body was at the tipping point where everything was unraveling as I saw him. So I responded very well to Airnest, but Dr. Sekeres, I was always looking at clinical trials, and he and I would always talk about what was new on the horizon, because I knew I would eventually need something, and I didn't want to go on one of the two cancer drugs. I just didn't. And sure enough, it was luspatercept 5 years ago. I was accepted in that trial, and I have been responding to luspatercept for the last 5 years. Well, a year ago, the FDA approved it for MDS. That's the first drug in 14 years to be approved for MDS. So it's pretty darn exciting. It's not a chemo, and it just helps the red blood cells. I should say help in the creation of red blood cells. So I'm very, very thankful for trial studies. I just can't say enough.
And Emily, what led to your diagnosis of aplastic anemia?
I had, let's see, I had carpal tunnel surgery. And then I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And so I went to the doctor. I've sort of suppressed all that. The doctor for that. And he prescribed and gave me methotrexate shots. Well, after about 2 months of that, my son said, you shouldn't be doing that. That's really dangerous. It's really dangerous. And anyway, my son was right, I guess, for me. But I continued because it's the doctor. And within 4 months, when I went in to get my shot, they said, your blood your count is dropping. And so then it was in, I guess, about 10 months after I'd been taking these shots, so I got a call from the doctor saying, you have to go to the oncologist. So what do you mean? Because like I say, my daughter had just given birth. No, you have to go there right away. So I went and I got diagnosed with severe aplastic anemia. And, but my doctor was kind. He said, yeah, go ahead and go see your grandson and then come back. And they tried something for a while. That was in January, early February. And then of 2012, I guess, 2012, right? And so, but I wasn't responding. And having grown up in Baltimore with a grandfather who was head of pharmacology at Hopkins, I was oriented to Hopkins. And evidently Hopkins and NIH have different routes of how to treat severe aplastic anemia. But I went to Hopkins and they're big on bone marrow transplants. Well, I'm 77 now, so that's what, 9 years ago. So I was past 70, or I was in my late 60s. But I didn't really have a good blood match. I didn't want to ask my daughter because she had a very hard birth, and my son's didn't work. And because I'd had a few transfusions already, I think that probably built up antibodies. And so I wasn't a match. And so when the Hopkins doctor held up this chart showing the course of severe aplastic anemia, I remember on the far left of that page was NIH trials. And I said, well, can I do that? And they said, well, yeah, you can ask about it. So I wrote a letter to Neil Young, Dr. Young, not knowing he's the #1 person in the whole world. What did I know? But he was very kind, wrote right back to me. That's where email is so, it helps you so quickly. And but he said, you have to wait 6 months after your ATG, because in May of that year, middle of May, I did horse ATG, but I didn't respond like I needed to, but I had to wait for 6 months after that treatment before NIH would let me be part of the trial. So I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I mean, right. And they had been working on trying to find a solution for decades, 30 years, I believe. Maybe Lee can correct me, but I think it's about 30 years. And I just happened to luck out. I didn't luck out first, as I said earlier, because you were supposed to respond in 3 months, and I didn't. But they saw something in my work. And I remember the doctor that I was under, an Irishman, Dr. Desmond, discussing this with Dr. Young at a counter looking at my blood. And he said, no, they had this protocol and you had to fit. And, but they saw something. But so I was booted out of the trial. And 18 months later, I contacted them after over 30 transfusions. And they said, yes, we'd love to see you again. So I went, and that's when they told me that they had changed the trial and we're just starting another group. And I asked if I could be part of it, and they let me. And so then I pretty soon I was no longer having transfusions. But I don't have perfect counts, but I live a normal life. I swim every single day, and I walk 2 to 3 miles every day, and I drink a lot of water. So I'm doing that, what I can. And I wanted, NIH keeps you on for like 3-year spans. So I'm on my end of my second span, because we're going to see if it would boot up the platelets. I don't think so. I think they're just happy at 60. But it doesn't impact me. So I guess that's my story.
Thank you, Emily. This question is for Donna. Were you concerned about entering a clinical trial without trying the FDA-approved treatments first? And why or why not?
That's a really good question. The answer to that is no, I was not concerned. I had talked with my doctor at great length about this trial, and I knew only, I think 158 people worldwide were going to be included in this, and you had to have the ringed sideroblast, which I have. I wanted to stay away, as far away from one of the chemo drugs as possible. I just didn't feel that I would be doing very well on it, and I had read a lot about it, both the drugs. This drug is a non-chemo. So I was really excited when, in learning all about luspatercept. My doc was so gracious. We would spend a lot of time talking about how luspatercept works in my blood, in my bone marrow, so that I would really understand it. Now, side effects, that didn't bother me, because the way I look at side effects is every drug you take has a side effect. And the side effects to luspatercept weren't any worse than the side effects to the chemos. Matter of fact, they were less scary for me. You know, tiredness, on and on and on. I thought, well, this pretty much speaks of MDS, so that's okay. Plus I have a really, really deep commitment in furthering any way I can the treatment for MDS. And going into this, because it was a double-blind study, it was okay to me if I didn't respond, because they're going to learn something about why this one person wasn't responding. I mean, they just don't toss you out. They learn a lot. And there were so few patients in this study anyhow. I was so thrilled to even be a part of it. I have been extremely fortunate in that I responded so well. Yes, you know, almost immediately you are not taking the placebo, because if you were, you would be receiving transfusions. And again, I am transfusion dependent. What is interesting is, because I have been responding for 5 years now on this drug, I know it's going to come a point in time, maybe sooner than later, that my body's going to stop responding. And I am already in conversation with my doc, Dr. Hetty Caraway, about what's on the horizon, what trial studies are out there. Again, I am just so committed to furthering all the, what do you want to say? Investigating the treatment of MDS. You know, I got a disease that there's no cure. And I was told I would only had 3 to 5 years. I was diagnosed in February of 2012. And I often laugh and say, yeah, I'm past my expiration. And they don't know. And this is something, they don't know if these trial drugs are extending your life. They can't know, because there's no trial to look at that. They will know down the road when they look back to say, wow. But knowing that I was only given 3 to 5 years initially, and I'm now 9 years out, I can't be more thrilled. Plus, because I did respond so wonderfully, it has given me a quality of life. My body responded very well. My experience with this drug is wonderful. Even if I hadn't responded, I would have looked for another trial study, because I just firmly believe that's the only way we're going to get a cure. We're going to make a breakthrough is through these trial studies. I'm just so committed. If I can help just one more patient, I will do that. So that's, to me, trial studies are the ultimate. It's the one way I can really give back and help.
This question's going to go to both of you. First, it says, thank you for sharing your stories. Very inspiring. So Emily, I'm going to let you answer this part first. How long do you plan on participating in your clinical trial?
Well, I'd be happy to stay with them forever, just because Donna said it beautifully. You just want to help. And what's the alternative? You just, if you can help, help. But there is a ending, evidently, with NIH where you're no longer can be part of it. I think I have one more year. They sort of go in 3, and also because the drug is accepted now. It was accepted several years ago by FDA, so it can be prescribed. So my doctor can prescribe it, and he has learned a lot too, that what it does, one of the things that participating in a trial is it opens a door for your doctor in your community to have a connection with a big research center. And so that has helped him to recommend people to go for a trial, or in this case, now that Eltramapag, also known as Promacta, is accepted, insurance companies have to accept it, so he can prescribe it. So he's been helping others. So that's another reason that I enjoyed participating. I think I have one more year. So I guess Donna and I both sort of came down with our maladies about the same time. And I don't know, have I answered the question? I guess so.
Thank you. And for you, Donna, with luspatercept being now an FDA-approved drug, are you still part of the clinical trial?
Yes, luspatercept now is known as Reblozyl because it was accepted by the FDA, and any doc can prescribe it. I am on a 5-year post-trial study, and my son just laughs and says, Mom, they got to be studying the heck out of your blood, because it ends up, I found out just by happenstance that I'm the longest person responding to it, which is incredible for me. But yeah, I am on a 5-year extended, and they will, even after that, they will continue to follow me. So at this point in time, even though Reblozyl is now approved, I am still getting my drug in post-trial. So I still have protocol that I follow, which is very important. So anybody else that would be getting on Reblozyl now would not be following my protocol. It would just be the docs. The good news is I don't have to have my bone marrow biopsy every 6 months. It was like, yay! But you know what? All of that information that they got from that is being used. It's being studied. They are just making sure that, they're making more advances, and that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think, did I answer that for you, Lee?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the next question is, how much education did you receive from your facilities before entering into a clinical trial? And what was that like? Emily, would you like to start?
Um, Gosh, it was so long ago, it's hard to remember. Um, I don't, I think they may have sent me some information. They always were most helpful answering questions. And making sure that they were always there if I had any questions. So if I had a question and I send them an email, they answered. I mean, they answered a lot faster than anybody in my family. And I've been with three different, an Irishman, a German, and now I have an American. They're all under Dr. Young. And so that's been fun. And they've always responded with very lengthy answers to any question that I have. So I don't remember back when I started in December of 2012 with the trial. But then there's another lady that was directly under Dr. Young. And she's always available too. So I just sort of feel like there's a team there that I can interact with. And although I may officially be off the trial's over. So that's the thing. They can't, for example, continue to sponsor me because they don't have those funds for this trial because the trial's over, but they would always be interested in my path forward. So I guess that's
Donna,
it.
how about you? What type of education did you receive about the trial and your responsibilities and the hospital's responsibilities?
I love to read, and poor Dr. Sekaras knew that. So there was no way we weren't going to have many conversations about luspatercept. But previous to me receiving, being accepted, well, no, I should say when I was accepted, I signed a packet. I believe off the top of my head, it was probably 38 pages long. It explained the drug, everything about the trial, step by step by step, and why they were doing all these steps. It was, and then if I had any questions, my backup, Dr. Sekera's backup, Tracy Sinelli, my treatment nurse, so knowledgeable about this drug. So I was very fortunate. I had both of them to lean on anytime I had a question. And they, I just had to laugh because Dr. Sekera said, you know, Donna, before I come in this room, I know I'm going to have to really do some thinking because you're going to ask a question that's going to make me ponder. And I thought, yep, that's right, because this is going in my body, but I just need to know what it's all about. And that just calms me. It just calms me. It's what is it doing and why is it doing it? So yeah. And then when I went into, when this drug, luspatercept, was approved by FDA, and it became Reblozyl, I was given another packet, and that probably was only maybe 18 to 20 pages long to explain what was included in the post-trial study and how long they would be following me.
Thank you so much. And this question is for both of you. What was the most challenging part of being in the trial?
Oh, I know. I don't know.
Emily, would you like to start with that one?
Okay, the first 3 months I was up there every month, and you would have a bone marrow transplant. I think I've had 20 bone marrow transplants. So biopsy. Thank you, Donna. Yeah, bone marrow biopsies. I discovered that it helps if you listen to music. So and my daughter had given me not an iPad, it's a little thing they don't make anymore that gave you music. And I wore mine out, but I would listen to Beethoven or Mozart and get through it. And then I discovered after, I think it was about number 10, that NIH has a sedation. So now I do a sedation, and I only have to have it once a year, but again, they want to look at it to see what's happening with my cells. And so that helps. And I don't seem to need much of what they sedate me with. So.
Great. And Donna, how about for you?
Well, I had to start laughing, Emily, not at you, but with you. Bone marrow biopsies were my dreaded test. There's nothing that for me, there was nothing that made it any better. Thank God for the pillow that I got that I could scream into. It's like, I just think I'm ultra sensitive. And luckily, Emily, I only had to have mine every 6 months. My heart goes out to you for your monthly. It was a nightmare. And then when I got to go into post-trial, it was up to the discretion of the doctor. And that was my first question. When I read it, I went, oh, I don't have to have any more, do I? And he went, nope, you don't. It's like, yay. Now, I'm sure at some point, the drug company will want me to have one maybe at the end, but man, I agree, Emily. Those are just, I told my dad, this is the most barbaric test ever. You got to come up with a better way to do it.
Well, I have a footnote to that. Because of the pandemic, I didn't have to go back in March. And my doctor said, NIH doctor said, I could have it here in Williamsburg at Centera. And they have a new fancy machine that identifies, and I bet Cleveland Clinic has it too, exactly where it should go in. And
Yeah.
it was a lot faster. It was a lot easier. So I don't know, given what we're going through right now, if I'll have to go back up in March, but I'm hoping in a way I don't, because I would rather have it here where they have that fancy machine. And it wasn't bad. Well, again, music helped me. I just focus on the music and put my mind into the music, and I wear a blindfold.
Yeah.
You sort of have your crutches to get through it.
You're right. You do have your crutches. They give some, it was kind of funny, like when they would say, I don't know, some kind of sedation, whatever. I said, give me every pill you got. And they said, well, you can have either or. I went, oh no, we're taking both. I got to go in that room. We're taking both. It was just, it was just bizarre. So yeah, but and my husband one time said, gosh, Don, I feel so bad for you. And I said, yeah, but look at it this way. If this is the worst that I have to experience, it's well worth it. I just had to keep focused. And music, yes, Emily, I agree with you. Music was a tremendous, tremendous console to me.
Thanks to both of you. Our next question, this goes to you both as well. Were you provided with all your lab results during the trial? Donna, would you like to take that one first?
Yes, absolutely. I go up every 3 weeks for my shots, and every 3 weeks we go over my labs. And yes, I get every lab. Then my bone marrow biopsy, we went over all the results of that. Yeah, at any test that it's ever done, my doc comes in and we sit and talk about it, go over it. My hat goes off to hematologists, because I'm telling you, that's a foreign language. I am not mastering. I try, but I cannot master. But yeah, every test.
Thank you. Emily, how about you?
Oh yes, they're very generous about sharing it all and explaining it. Yeah, so they keep you up. And like I say, my doctor now is Dr. Young's, but not Neil Young, it's David Young. Neil Young is like the god to severe aplastic anemia. but this is another young, and he always sends a real long response with everything. Like when I asked him, do you think I should get the vaccine? Because I was concerned, is this going to upset the apple cart here? And he sent me a long, not telling me what to do, but laying everything out. So any question I have, I get an answer from him with usually the same day. If I don't, it's because there's some reason and he apologizes. And I think, oh my goodness, you don't need to apologize.
Thank
Emily,
you.
you sound like I do. It's our journey. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you have a team that is so concerned with your journey because they're part of your journey. That's how I look at it.
Thank
Yeah.
you both. This next question goes to you both. Were you personally kept up to date with the results of the overall trial? Donna, would you like to take that one first?
Well, yes, no, that's a yes, no answer, and I'm sorry to have to say that, but as the data would come in, it was only released every so often. But when it was released, it was numbers. You had no idea what was what. And then by that, I mean the number of people that were enrolled and how many were responding. And it was like a weekly cycle. How many were still responding after X number of weeks. That pretty much was it until the end of the trial. Then you were given all the information.
Emily, how about you? Were you kept up to date on the results of the trial?
I'd say when the publication came out, but they would always verbally, if I asked a question, they would respond. But like I say, I got booted out the first time because I hadn't responded. But when I came back a year and a half later and they told me more, there was going to be another 24 people. I was one of 24 in the first batch. And then I think it was about the same number that came in plus me. And it was my lab work from that 18 months later and one other person. So I knew that, but you don't really know. But then when it's published, you can read it and sort of make sense of it. I guess I'm not scientifically oriented. I'd ask my sister, she taught science and was better at it. So.
Emily, was your trial done by your hospital, by Johns Hopkins, or was it done by a pharmaceutical company?
It was a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
Right. Novartis, I think. No, it
Okay.
was a pharmaceutical company. So
Oh,
like Dr. Young said, when I saw him it was actually, I can date it because it was the Tuesday before all hell broke loose with the COVID. It was March 10th and it was Tuesday. And my daughter had a fit because she's at Yale and she knew stuff that the rest of us didn't know. And she said, we're driving down the driveway to drive up there. And she said, what do you mean you're going up there? You shouldn't go up there. And I thought, what do you mean? I'm meeting my granddaughter. We're meeting couples. We're going to a play. Forget it. But anyway, so yeah.
yeah.
This
I was
next-
just curious. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. This next question goes to you both. Did at any point you ever think about stopping your enrollment in the trial? Emily, would you like to take that one first?
No, because like I say, what did I have to lose? I mean, I would, and if I wasn't going to respond, at least it would help other people. So when I had the treatment that's a week long, ATG with horse ATG, they tried all these different things before. They'd try rabbit and then they tried horse, and 2/3 of the people respond. I was in the third that did not respond. And so I plugged in and just went with it. Now, I belong to an aplastic anemia face group, closed face group. And I know that not everybody responds to Promacta or Eltramapag, but became part of the treatment for the ATG. When you go through that, you also get Promacta, and that tended to help a lot of people. So I wouldn't ever drop out. I mean, they can have my blood work. Now it's every 3 months. I have it here locally, and they add into what they're doing.
Thank you, Emily. Donna, how about you?
No, I would never drop out of a study. Now, that's not, I can never say never. When I entered the study, I knew.
I think Donna froze.
You're in that study, you want to advance the treatment. And that's where I belonged, to help anybody, any other blood cancer patient I could.
Thank you. And what advice do you both have for somebody who is considering a clinical trial? What's your best advice for a patient who may be looking at enrolling in a trial? Emily, would you like to start first?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because actually I have a friend who we've walked together all through this, and she's seen what I was like at the beginning, and I still walk, but and now she has some kind of heart condition, and she was over just briefly, and she is going to do a trial for what she has. And so I think she saw how it helped me. So I think it's like Donna was saying, it's a team. It's another team besides your local team. And it's the best in the world, that these are places that are sharing information, and you feel like you're part of it. So if you have an opportunity, go for it. That's my feeling.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Emily. Donna, how about you?
I say to any patient that is considering a clinical trial, hang on to hope. Hope is what I'm sure Emily, from listening to her, she was filled with hope that this would work. I was filled with hope that this would work. I think I can speak for you, Emily. We were both filled with hope that this would advance the treatment of both of our diseases. Yeah, I would say go for it. Hang on to hope and hang on to gratitude, because it's because of these companies that are creating these drugs, the new treatments, that we are getting the quality of life we are, and that advancements will be made and are being made. It's really tough having an illness that there is no cure. I'm not an MDS patient that will ever qualify for a stem cell transplant. That was hard for me to accept initially. And that's when I started thinking about trial studies. I thought, okay, you can sit and wallow in sorrow and sadness, but let's start looking around. There are trial studies, and who knows what's going to happen. I just hoped that I would find something. I hoped I would find a team. I hung on to my hope, and I am so grateful I did. And I'm so grateful for the team my medical team. Unbelievable. If I weren't in the trial study, I wouldn't have my trial nurse. I'm so grateful for her. She just keeps me going. And, I still have MDS days. I still have days where I just want to throw the towel in. And I looked at my husband and said, I'm really tired of having this. I am really tired of it. And then you say, well, you foolish person, what good is that going to do you, right? Yeah, and you just keep moving. You just keep moving, because there's so much, I don't know, there's just so much hope and gratitude out there. Please, a trial study is so worth the while. The next trial study that I go on, maybe I won't have this kind of experience. but they'll always, I'm always thinking there'll be another one, there'll be another one. So, yeah.
Thanks, Donna. And Donna, this question is for you. Was your MDS considered low risk or high risk?
I am low. If I was high, I would qualify for a stem cell transplant. I am low to moderate.
Okay, thank you. And what would be some key questions that you would advise patients to ask before enrolling in a clinical trial? Were there questions that you asked that helped you decide that the trials that you entered were the right trials for you? Emily, did you have any questions that you asked to decide that this was the right trial for you?
Well, after being rejected by Johns Hopkins, because they like to do bone marrow transplants, and I wasn't acceptable, just like Donna wasn't for the stem cell. I was willing to do whatever they wanted me to do. So I asked, they told me the commitment, what it would be to come up, which is about 3 hours away, 3.5 hours away. I lucked out because my dear aunt lived 7 minutes away from NIH, so in Bethesda, so we could stay with her, and that it was sort of something to look forward to. That helped, and she's since moved away, so I don't have that now. But during the first 6 years, she was there. But you have a commitment to come and to be there. So I think that's what you want to know is what do I need to do physically as far as coming there? And like I say, they were adaptable. They let me do the bone marrow biopsy here in Williamsburg. So because nobody wanted to go traveling anywhere. So.
Thank you. Donna, how
Yeah.
about you? Were there some questions you asked that you think would be helpful for other people to know to ask?
Yeah, before you go into a study, just talk to your doc about what this drug does, what the goals are. That's important. I knew in the goal for luspatercept was to keep me as far away from transfusions as possible. And then, you're going to ask, what is involved in this trial study? And literally, it should be all printed out for you. Emily said she was very fortunate. All she had to do was email, and she got responses immediately. I'm right here by my doc, like 20 minutes away. So, and I see him every 3 weeks. I never had to ask a question. I never had a question, I should say, that I needed answer ASAP. I also have Tracy, my treatment nurse. I think the most important thing is to have an open dialogue with your doctor and your treatment nurse, and just flat out ask them, what questions should I be asking you? They're the ones that know medicine. They're the ones that know the goals. They're the ones that know what all is involved. You don't. You're blind. You don't have that vocabulary that they have. As I always say, it's a foreign language. So I think the most important question is, what question should I be asking you? And what do you want me to journal? And I asked that now. That question was brought forward to me recently. What should I be journaling this next 3 weeks? Maybe there's something specific that they really need a leg up on, and that you're just associating it with MDS as opposed to that's important information for this drug. So open dialogue with your doctor. That is just primary. And ask, what should I be asking you? What should I expect?
This question goes to you both. Are either of you still getting transfused? Emily, would you like to take that one first?
Sure. No, I've not had a transfusion. Oh, I guess for about 6 years. When I got that response 6 years ago in the spring, I thought, okay, and it went on. I was good, and I said, "Can we travel?" And he said, "Sure." But I just remembered this. They knew we were going to England, which is where we spent a lot of time. My husband's an English historian, and spent a lot of time in Cambridge. Our first child was born there, and NIH arranged that there are these people that come there from all over the world, and they had someone that had been part of their team who was in London, and so they knew my whole case and everything. So if there was any problem, that would be there. So we took our granddaughter. She saw the house where her daddy had come back from the hospital in Cambridge. And we started our day in our friend's house, which is 15th century Tudor cottage. And she's now just graduated and figuring out what she's going to do. So, yeah.
Thanks, Emily. Donna, how about you?
When I started the luspatercept, I was 4.5 years transfusion free. However, yesterday I just had a transfusion because since I am still on post-trial study, I have to follow the protocol. And in order to transition up to the next dose, it is in protocol that my hemoglobin has to reach a certain level, go down so low, and I have to have a transfusion. So I am transitioning to the next dose of luspatercept. So I just had a transfusion. So yeah, but I have been transfusion free for many years now.
Thank you. Earlier, you answered the question, what was the most challenging part of being in a clinical trial? What do you think is the best part of being in a clinical trial? Donna, would you like to go first?
Yeah, that's twofold. My quality of life has improved dramatically because I was transfusion dependent, even though I was on Aranesp, and those transfusions were coming fast and furious. So that was not a good quality of life at all. So it would be, my quality of life has improved greatly. That's my experience with luspatercept. And then just knowing that I'm helping the next person and the next person and the next person. That's pretty darn rewarding.
Thank you, Donna. Emily, how about you? What's the best part of being in a clinical trial?
Well, I think Donna said it, being part of a team that is going to help anybody else that comes this. And both of us, it sounds like, have had our drug approved by FDA. So it's now something that our doctor can prescribe to other people in our community if they should come down with one of these rare blood disorders. Is there anything else? Well, I mean, I have lots of energy, but I always push myself anyway. So I'm a big exercise person. So the 40 transfusions that I've had were spread over about 3 years. And as I say, the last 6 years, I haven't had any transfusions.
Well, thank you both for sharing your time, sharing your stories and your experiences with all of us today. It's so much appreciated by you both. And if you'd like to watch this webinar again at a later time, it will be available on our website within 2 to 3 business days. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to send it to us in 3 ways. You can send us an email to help@aamds.org, call our helpline at 800-747-2820, or submit your question to our Facebook page. On behalf of the Aplastic Anemia and MDS International Foundation, thank you for joining us today, in making us your resource of choice for information on bone marrow failure diseases. Our medical advisory board and team are always here to support you and your family, as we have done for the past 37 years. This concludes our program today. Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you.